In this video, we are continuing to look at the dimensional analysis practice sheet, starting with number 6, which says convert 3.14 miles to kilometers. So let's start by underlining our given value. Our given is 3.14 miles. So we're going to write that all the way over to the left-hand side, 3.14, and I'll abbreviate miles MI. Now, I always like to put my given value over 1, so to remind myself that it's up in the numerator. And then we are doing dimensional analysis, we'll be multiplying by at least one conversion factor to get our answer. Now, in setting up our conversion factor, we want the unit that we need to get rid of to go on the bottom. And in this case, that unit that we want to get rid of is miles. We're going to take it from up in the numerator here and drag and drop it down to the denominator down here. Oh, and I might have made my miles a little bit long there. Let's get rid of that. And then the unit that we are trying to get to, our desired unit, goes up in the numerator. So in our problem, we're looking back and it says convert miles to kilometers. We know that our desired unit is kilometers. That's what goes up in the numerator, and I'm going to abbreviate kilometers, km. Our next step is to fill in our numbers. Unfortunately, we're given how many miles equals a certain number of kilometers. We're given those values to use in our conversion factor. So all we need to do is pair up those numbers. So 1 mile equals 1.6 kilometers. I'm going to put a 1 next to miles. And I'll put 1.6 next to kilometers in my conversion factor. Now that we have all that set up, all we need to do is multiply everything in the numerator and divide by everything in the denominator. So we'll come over to our calculator and type 3.14 times 1.6. We'll hit enter and divided by 1, which we know is still going to be the same answer. So coming back, our answer was 5.024, and we need to figure out what unit our answer will have. Our miles, there's 1 in the numerator and 1 in the denominator, so our miles are going to cancel out, and we're just going to be left with kilometers as our answer. So let's put that unit, kilometers. And then the final step in our problem is to round to correct significant figures. So we just need to pay attention to the number of significant figures in our given value. 3.14 has 3 significant figures. So we want our answer also to have 3 significant figures. So we get to keep the 5.02. And then we need to round based on this 4. So 4 is less than 5, so our 2 right here is going to stay a 2. We don't round up. So our final answer will be 5.02 kilometers. And I'm going to box my final answer just like that. Number 7. Convert 789,000 micrometers, and it tells us that the abbreviation for micrometers is the Greek letter mu and then m for meters, so micrometers. And I'll label that for you. This is the Greek letter mu, which we might have talked about before. But that stands for micro, and then the lowercase m stands for meters, just like you're used to. Micrometers, we're converting to millimeters, which the abbreviation for millimeters is just mm. So when we're talking about micro, we can't use mm, because mm stands for millimeters. The lowercase m is milli, and then mu, that Greek letter mu, is micro. When you draw a mu, it's typically you start all the way at the bottom, go straight up, and then make a U shape at the top. So just to do that one more time, we start at the bottom, go straight up, and then make a U shape at the top. Because you might not have seen that symbol very often before. But this is just like any other problem. Even though we have a kind of weird unit, micrometers, it's just like any other problem. We find our given value, convert 789,000, and we keep underlining until we have a unit to go with it, so micrometers. And we write that all the way to the left-hand side of our page. 789,000. And I'm going to put the abbreviation micrometers. And I always like to put my given value over 1 to remind myself that it's up in the numerator. And because this is dimensional analysis, we'll multiply some conversion factor. Now that we have that set up, our unit that we want to cancel goes in the denominator of our conversion factor. So that would be down here in the bottom part. So that would be micrometers. So we'll move that to the denominator. And then we want the unit that we are desiring, the unit we're trying to get to, in the top of our conversion factor. So let's look back at our problem. It says convert micrometers to millimeters. We're going to millimeters. MM. Now we have all our numbers set up, so all we have to do is we have all our units set up, so all we have to do is fill in our numbers. And it tells us that 1 millimeter equals 1,000 micrometers. So next to millimeters, I'll put a 1. And next to micrometers, I'll put a 1,000. And finally, we need to use our calculator, or actually in this case we really could just look at this and cancel out zeros. We could say, okay, there's 3 zeros in the denominator, cancel the 3 zeros in the numerator, and that way we have 789 times 1 divided by 1 would still be 789. But if you are not used to canceling zeros that way, then we can also type this in our calculator, 789,000 divided by 1,000. And of course we'll still get 789 if we do it that way as well. So whichever way you feel most comfortable is fine. 789. And then our units, micrometers is in the numerator and is in the denominator, so that will cancel out. And we're just left with millimeters. Alright, now we just need to check on our significant figures. In our given value, we have just 3 significant figures because these trailing zeros are not significant because there's no decimal point. So this has 3 significant figures. And our final answer already has 3 significant figures as well. So all we need to do is box that final answer. Number 8 says convert 78.2 grams to moles, and it tells us that 1 mole equals 18 grams. So it doesn't matter that you might not know what a mole is yet. You will know later in chemistry class, but it doesn't matter. It's just another unit, and it tells us how many grams equal a certain number of moles. So we can use that information to make a conversion factor even though we don't know what a mole is. As long as I give you a conversion factor, you could convert dogs to fish or fish to werewolves. It doesn't matter. Units are, in general, just made up things by people. And so as long as we know what the conversion rate is, we can always convert between 2 different units. So 1 mole equals 18 grams. We're going to go with that. And we'll set up our problem just like we would any other problem, starting with our given value, 78.2 grams. We'll put that over 1 so we know it's up in the numerator. And we'll multiply by a conversion factor. The unit we want to cancel is grams, so we're going to go ahead and drag and drop grams down to the bottom, down to the denominator. And then the unit we want to convert to, we're trying to get 2 moles. So we'll put moles up in the numerator, and the abbreviation for mole is MOL, but if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can just go ahead and put MOLE, write out the entire word. We'll do that here. So now we have our unit set up, and we're just going to use this piece of information that we're given to fill in our values. So we know that 1 mole equals 18 grams, so we're going to put 1 next to mole, and we'll put the 18 next to the grams. Now that we have all this set up, we need to use our calculator. So 78.2 times 1 is still going to be the same thing, divided by 18. And that gives us 4.34444, a bunch of 4s. So we'll just put 4.344, and we'll stop there. So now let's figure out our units. We have grams in the numerator and grams in the denominator, so they will cancel out. And we're just left with moles. So we converted into this new unit of moles. M-O-L-E-S, or M-O-L is the abbreviation. Last but not least, we need to look at our significant figures. Up here in our given value, we have 3 significant figures. So we need to round our final answer to 3 as well. So we get to keep 1, 2, 3 digits, and then we need to round based on this second 4. That 4 is less than 5, so we will round to 4.34 moles. And I am going to abbreviate it in our final answer, MOL. There we go. Second to last problem here, convert 2.3 moles to particles. And whatever a mole is, whatever a particle is, we're not really worried about that right now because it tells us that 1 mole equals 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles. So it's a really big number. The trickiest part about this problem is going to be typing it into our calculator, but don't worry, it's not too hard. And we've talked about it some before, but if you forget, just ask how to enter it into your particular calculator. And make sure you know how to do it before we take a quiz or a test. But your teacher will be happy to help you with it when you're doing practice problems. So convert 2.3 moles. We found our given value, that 2.3 moles. And I'm going to abbreviate moles MOL. Over 1 times some conversion factor will equal some new value with a new unit. Now we want moles to cancel out, so we're going to take moles from the top right here and we're going to move it to the bottom of our conversion factor. And we want to get to the new unit of particles. So that's what's going to go on top, particles, and there is actually no abbreviation for particles. So make sure you write the whole thing out. And that's going to be something that frustrates you the entire time in chemistry, but there is no abbreviation for particles. You just have to write the word out. Now that we have that set up, we were told that 1 mole equals 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles. And that is a really, really, really big number because 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd is 602 with 21 more zeros on it. So if I were to keep writing that out, that might take a while, but it's a really big number. Keep going, keep adding zeros. But we're going to keep it in scientific notation because it's a lot easier to do that than to write out 21 zeros. And there's a simple way to type scientific notation into our calculator, as we know. So let's just go ahead and pair up those numbers. 1 mole, so I put my 1 next to mole, which is in the denominator, equals 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles. So I'm going to put 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles. And you might have to write it a little bit of a slant like I do, but that's okay. Now we're going to come over to our calculator and we're going to type this into our calculator. So we're going to type 2.3 times, and I'm going to go ahead and put the 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd part in parentheses. So to type this in, it may be a little bit different on your calculator, but you're going to type the first part of the number before the multiplication sign, 6.02, and then instead of typing times 10 to the 23rd and all that stuff, which now I'm going to have to delete. Whoop, let's go back. Let's see. We don't want all that in our calculator. That's going to cause our calculator to read our number incorrectly. But instead of typing all that in, there's a shortcut. And on your calculator, it may look a little bit different. You're looking for a special button, and that button will either say times 10 to the x, or times 10 to the n, or e, one of those buttons is what you're going to press. And on my calculator, actually, before I hit my special button, which is right here, it's the comma, but as you can see, if I just hit it, it puts commas, and that's not what I want. I need to get to the EE, which is above the button. So I actually have to hit second, which makes that a little arrow, and then I hit that button, and it'll put an E in there. And that E includes the times 10 part. So this part right here, it includes the times 10 part. That's included with the button that I clicked. So now all I need to type in is the exponent. All I need to type in is that 23, E23. Then I'm going to close my parentheses, and then I'll hit enter. And notice that it gives me an answer that's written with that E notation, which I like to call calculator notation. So I need to take that calculator notation and translate it back into actual scientific notation. So instead of writing 1.3846 e to the 24th, instead of writing that, I'm going to put it in actual scientific notation, which is 1.3846, and instead of writing E, I'm going to put times 10 to the 24th power, because that is correct scientific notation. That E part is just the way the calculator shows it, but we don't want to write that out on paper, so we need to translate it. So now we have our answer written out, and we just need to figure out our units. So moles, we have moles in the numerator, moles in the denominator, so those are going to cancel out. And our unit is particles. So particles. Particles, very long word. And of course we need to round to correct significant figures. Let me erase some of these E's so we have room to write our final answer. So we have 2.3 moles as our given value. That has two significant figures, so we need to round our final answer to 2 as well. Now the times 10 to the 24th part does not count towards significant figures. It's just the value before the times 10 part. So we're going to keep the 1 and the 3, and we're always going to keep the times 10 to the power part. That doesn't go away. But then we round at the 8. And the 8's going to make the 3 round up to a 4. So our final answer, rounded, would be 1.4. That has two significant figures, just as we wanted. And then we always keep the exponent part, times 10 to the 24th. And of course our unit is particles. That is our final answer. A lot of work here, but you'll get much more used to typing this kind of stuff into your calculator and easily converting between calculator notation and actual scientific notation. Our last problem also is a particle and mole problem, but we're told again that 1 mole still equals 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles. This time we're starting, it says convert 1.23 times 10 to the 23 particles 2 moles. So we're starting with a number in scientific notation, and we're converting it to some new number. So when we write this out, we're going to keep the scientific notation. So our given value is the 1, whoops, go back there, accidentally drew on the board, whoops, 1.23 times 10 to the 23rd particles times 10 to the 23rd, and just to save space I'm going to put particles underneath, and we'll put it over 1 to remind us that is up in the numerator. And then we're going to multiply by some conversion factor to get some new value. Now the unit that I want to cancel this time is the particles. I need that to be down in my denominator. So we'll put particles down in the denominator, and we want to get to our new unit, 2 moles. Moles is our new unit, so I'll put moles, or MOL, up in the numerator. Let's fill in some numbers now. So 1 mole equals 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd particles. So I'm going to put a 1 next to my mole. And that 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd will go next to the particles. So 6.02, bear with me, times 10 to the 23rd. Now we need to type this into our calculator. And this time we have two numbers that are in scientific notation. So we're going to have to use that E button again. So I'm going to type 1.23, and then I'm going to do second, comma, which puts that E, and I'm just going to put the exponent 23. So here's my first number, 1.23 e to the 23rd, times 1, so I don't need to type that in because that'll still be the same thing, divided by 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd. And when we divide by a number in scientific notation, it is very important that we put that number in parentheses. I opened up my parentheses, typing 6.02 second, comma, put that E, 23rd, and then I'm going to close my parentheses. So the parentheses are to make sure my calculator reads that correctly, because sometimes if we don't put parentheses, our calculators will not read the scientific notation correctly. So I get a number, it's no longer in scientific notation, so I just am going to write that out. Let's see. Coming back over here, we have 0.2043. I'll stop there. And let's figure out our final units. Particles on top and on bottom, so they're going to cancel out. And then we're left with moles. So I'll put my unit mole. And then let's look, last but not least, at our significant figures. So our given value, 1.23 times 10 to the 23rd, remember we're only looking at this first part over here for significant figures, so 1.23 has 3 significant figures. We need to round our answer to 3 significant figures as well. 1, 2, 3 places, and then we're going to use that 3 to round. 3 is less than 5, so the 4 is going to stay a 4, so our final answer is going to be 0.204 moles. And I'll box that final answer, and we are finally done.